I'm going to stop you all because it's 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock it's time for Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your moderator today, but today we have a guest star, Nick Cook.
Ooh.
And our old friend Ernie's going to introduce Nick. So what I'm going to do is put the spotlight on Nick, and I'm going to put the spotlight on Ernie so he can introduce him, and then we're going to show slides and have a conversation with as many people as want to join in as we can get on the screen. So, Ernie, over to you. And hello, Nick. Welcome aboard.
Good morning. Thank you.
I met Nick. I'm sorry about that. I met Nick Cook sometime in the 1980s at one of the episodic turning happenings held by Rudy Solnick at his home/shop in Berea, Kentucky. Solnick influenced a cadre of talented woodturners, most of who went on to further the craft. Both Nick and I count Rudy as a mentor. As an aside, someone please ask Nick about Miss Chastain's finest finish, one of the secrets and mysteries of the trade passed to us by Rudy. Nick taught often at Conover workshops where his turning classes always brought acclaim. Susan and I enjoyed Nick's visits to present his workshops. Evening conversations were far-ranging on all things craft. Nick has taught wood turning at a host of craft schools across the country and written many informative articles for the AAW Journal. Nick and I both share Barry Schwagert as a friend and colleague. As head of Powermatic's engineering department, Barry tapped talented woodworkers for input on machine design. He sought our input when updating Powermatic's line of fine lathes. First me on the updating of the 3520B, the input for the A model having been from Rudy Solnick, and then Nick for input on the 4240. Nick was an excellent choice for the 4240 redesign because he brought a true architectural turner's knowledge to this massive lathe that handles gargantuan turnings like they were pen blanks. Please, everyone, welcome Nick Cook.
Thanks, Ernie.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard. Let me go to a gallery view for a second and have a look at everybody who's here. We got 43, 44 on screen right now. So there you go. There you go. Now, Nick, shall we ask you a couple questions first, or you want to show some slides first? Okay.
Sure,
so I'd like to know how you got started.
My dad had a lathe when he was 14 years old from Sears and Roebuck. And as I was growing up, he had gotten rid of the lathe because he was in the Navy and we traveled a lot and moved from place to place.
Wow.
But he always had a table saw. He told everybody I started using the table saw when I could see over the top of it. And then he got another lathe when I was about 14 or 15. And it's downhill from there.
So you're a professional turner, right? Your whole adult life.
That's all I do. And in 1988, I quit my real job and decided to turn full time.
Well, what was your real job?
I was vice president of sales for an acoustical wall system based here in Atlanta.
And you live in Marietta now, is that right?
Marietta, which is about 17 miles northwest of Atlanta. And that's where my house is. And 2 miles from the house is my shop that I've been in for 31 years.
Now, is that shop like a retail location? Can customers come there?
They can come in, but it's actually an artisan resource center. The whole building is about 43,000 square feet, and there are 20 different studios, shops, whatever you want to call them. I don't have a studio. I'm a wood turner and a craftsman. I have a shop. So,
well, how big is your shop?
About 1,500 square feet.
And what's in there for equipment? I know you're not going to show us many pictures of it.
No, I told you the other day that it's in too bad a shape. I don't get paid to clean, and I am covered up with work right now. So I've got work on top of work, and I've got 9 lathes. I've got a 15-inch and an 18-inch bandsaw. I've got a 12-inch helical head joiner and a 22-inch helical head planer. I've got a 20-inch disc sander, and that's pretty much all my equipment.
So,
And
so are
it's
you
not
work,
uncommon for me to have something on most of the lathes at any given time, and I just bounce back and forth as I get bored with one project. So
so are you working alone in there, or do you have apprentices or helpers?
I work alone for the most part. I've got a young man who um, his dad and I have been friends for 40 years, and when he started going to college near me, I told him if he wanted to come and work a few days a week, he could. And he's graduated from college now. He's now a rep for a beer distributor, but he usually comes on Friday and does some cutout work for me and maybe run and get some lumber and all. So
So do you do mostly spindles and architectural work, or do you also do faceplate, or what's your range of work?
90% of what I do is spindle work, mostly commercial turning for other woodworkers, architects, contractors. I've got 50 balustrades to do right now. I've got 2 newel posts. I've got 100 acorn boxes to do. Just a few odds and ends like that. But I do a lot of architectural work. The 4224 that Ernie mentioned, I helped design that. And when they got the prototype ready, they flew me to Taiwan, let me play with it. I have serial number 1, and I've added a 63-inch bed extension, and that wasn't long enough. So I added a 20-inch bed extension. Now I can do 10 feet, and it's not fun, but I do it, and I'm about the only guy in Atlanta can do that.
How often do you get to do you have to do something 10 feet long?
Uh, Usually about once every 6 months or so. It's not common, and I try to price it so that they won't let me do it. I'm getting old, and it's too hard to handle stuff like that.
Yeah, it's heavy. Crush your arthritic knuckles when it falls on your.
Do you
Yep.
also find that the quality of the wood you can get, especially Western cedar for posts, has really gone down during the pandemic as well?
Oh, it's been awful, and everything has gone up so much recently. I mean, poplar, I'm paying $3.30 a board foot for. Most of the outdoor work now I do out of sapele. And about a year or so ago, I did some 9-foot columns that were 9 inches in diameter with 16 flutes. And that's a lot of work because just walking back and forth the 9 feet to do the flutes is a pain.
Whoa.
You're
Your
involved
audio
with
went
the
away, Ernie. You got
35.
muted.
Yeah, he's back.
You're involved with the 3520C as well, correct?
Yes.
Because actually, you wound up selling me mine, to be honest. At Raleigh, you took me through all the features and such, and I did wind up buying it. And I've been real happy with it too.
Well, good.
You have a
Ernie,
nice
you got muted.
Ernie's muted.
Yeah.
Ernie's muted. Yeah.
There he is.
Have you found on doing the long columns that you have to do one element at a time because they change so much with the latest wood that if you don't sand it out at that point, it'll just warp more and it just all goes cattywampus?
It is ridiculous, the material that I'm getting now. I just did 6 1.25 square by 38-inch long spindles yesterday, and I had to cut about a dozen or 15 just to get 6 that weren't crooked. I mean, all of it has tension in it, but you would think if you ran it through the joiner and the planer and got it square and true, I mean, and you turn around and put it on the lathe and it just goes crazy.
Yeah. And you keep a can of Bondo, haven't you?
Any other introductory questions from the room before we go to the slideshow?
Just a question: is that distortion because the suppliers aren't drying it properly?
I think it has a lot to do with the drying process. I don't know if they're trying to rush it through or whatever, but all of it seems to have a lot of tension in it lately. And as you're running it through the saw, and I don't use a table saw anymore. I don't have room for it. It's a horizontal surface that collects stuff. So I run it through my big bandsaw and then the joiner and the planer. But I mean, it just, when you run it through the saw, it just either closes up or it just spreads apart.
Do you have a 9-foot tool rest, or do you have to move it all?
No, actually, Powermatic quit making long tool rests a number of years ago. I bought 2 banjos, and then I got a metal fabricator to make me a 26-inch tool rest that is stainless steel, and it works very well. I wish I'd have had him make it 30 or 36, but I can move it a little bit. So
Is that on a single banjo or on 2 banjos?
no, it's on 2 banjos.
Yeah.
And Nick, I know you said that about 90% of what you do is spindle work. What kind of stuff do you enjoy turning the most?
I like doing my boxes. I also like doing a lot of the production stuff, the gift items. I do a lot of handles for bottle openers and pizza cutters and that sort of thing. I still do some wine stoppers, not nearly the quantity that I used to do, but I mean, those things that are quick and easy are fun to do, and I can sell them quickly. So.
Do you like the process of making a lot of things like really very quickly? Is that kind of fun for you?
I do. When I'm doing the spindle work, like, a couple of dozen legs, my goal is to see how fast I can get the last one done.
Okay, so how fast can you do the last one in a set of legs?
It depends on how many details are on it and how many pommels are on it and all that. And some of them go very quickly, and others, I mean, they're time consuming. So the 50 that I have to do right now that are balustrades, they've got a square in the center and a square on each end, and the turnings in between the squares are different from one end to the other, so they're going to take a while.
Wow. Any more quick questions from the room, or should we go to the slides? Okay, I'm going to go to the slides. What I'm going to do is share screen, and then you can tell me when to change slide, and we'll talk and ask questions about each one. Is that okay with you?
Okay, that'll be fine.
You seeing it?
Those are the talking heads. Those are mannequin heads for a company here in Marietta that they do exhibits. And this happens to be for Redken's hairstyling products. They were taken and painted black and put graffiti all over them, and then the wig set on top of that. And I've done those a dozen at a time twice.
Woof. How big are they?
They're the size of a head. They're about 15 inches tall and maybe 8 or 9 inches in diameter.
Poplar?
Poplar, because they're going to get painted. That's my go-to for paint grade. Soft maple is my go-to for stain grade.
Okay, let me go to the next slide.
They called me and said, can you make 40 collection plates? I think our church maybe has 8. And I said, sure. And I gave them a price, and they said, well, if we go ahead and order 40, will you give us a 10% discount? And I said, sure, why not? But Sapele worked well for that, and it's pretty. I did the little recess in the center where their velvet pad goes. So, and what I did to make sure that they would nest, I turned one out of poplar and cut it in half, and I tested each one of them.
Huh. So what would you charge them to do that if you were doing that today for a collection plate like that? Just so we roughly know.
Those were fairly simple, $75 a piece.
Cool. Questions? Anybody?
Nick, are those the same? Are those all the same wood?
Yes, they are. And that's one of the nice things about Sapele is it can be straight grain, or the one in the bottom is just gorgeous, but it's all out of the same batch of lumber.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
That's a beautiful piece of wood on the bottom.
Yeah, and I do a lot of platters out of that. They get laser engraved. You'll see one a little bit later.
What finish on this? On these?
Minwax wipe on poly. I find that's readily available. It's fairly inexpensive. It's very durable. And I typically do 3 to 4 coats, sanding in between, and then I buff it afterwards with just the carnauba wax and the wheel buffing system.
Do you wet sand or dry sand?
Dry sand.
To what grit?
Usually 600. These are my acorn boxes. In the past 2 years, I've made over 800 of these, and I've got another 100 to do right now. They're gifts for a construction company based in Birmingham, and they present them to their new employees at orientation, and they put stuff in them. I have no idea what kind of stuff they put in them, but a long time ago, I wrote an article on doing the acorn boxes with a screw cap. And the gentleman brought that to me and said, would you like to do a few hundred of these? I said, no, you can't afford them. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm not doing hundreds of them with a screw cap. So these boxes, the top actually pops off.
How big are they?
I'm sorry?
How big are they?
The top is 12-quarter walnut. The bottom is 10-quarter maple. And overall, they're between 4.5 and 5 inches long.
And how big a batch do you make at a time?
100.
So when you do that, do you get all the wood out at once, or you do it in stages?
I usually do it about 20 at a time. I'll take and cut up all the blanks to double the length and rough them out and put the tenons on them, then cut them in half. And then for the tops, I do all the tops first. I drill the hole in the top about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch deep so that they're all consistent with a Forstner bit. And then I put them back on the lathe and turn the outside, sand and finish them. And then I fit them to the base individually. So.
And you don't do the engraving, or do you do that too?
Oh, no, I don't have one. I don't want one. It's just another thing to collect dust. But I have somebody that's a former IT guy. He started doing it as a part-time gig, and he's retired from Delta now, and he does this full-time. I send him all my work, and I also send him work from a lot of other people. So we
Very
keep
cool.
him busy.
Do you give a completion date, or do they get them when you get them?
Oh, no, I have a completion date. These have to be ready by early September. So. Basic newel post, and the one on the right was water damaged, and they brought it to me and said, can you make a new one? And that's what I did. So, and
So
you
how do
see
you
a
do
little corner of my shop there. That is a Jet 1642 on the right, and I just got rid of it because I got the 2014 to replace it. I didn't need another long lathe. I have plenty of those. So.
How do you do the fluting?
These I did with the Flute Master, which I got, and I thought it would work better than it did, but you need to put it on a different base. It's not big enough. It's not heavy enough. So I made a wood base for it and put a counterweight on the backside, and I use a Jet die grinder. And I set up a little jig so I could vary the depth as needed. And these were like, I don't know, 3/8 or 1/2 inch wide, and the same depth. And I just, you'd got to do them one at a time. And the indexing on the 4224 is really nice for this. We've got 3 rings on it, 14, 36, and 48.
So when you're
use
Go ahead.
core box bit.
Yep.
And do you put some kind of a little homemade end over it so it follows the contour and keeps it a constant dip? And do you do it on the center line?
I do it on the center line, on the face side rather than from the top. And I do have a setup so that there's a depth gauge, and I can set it so that they're all the same depth.
Yeah.
So how do you finish a thing like this off? I mean, if you got that between centers, the top looks like it's perfectly round and polished. How do you make that happen?
Well, the one on the right is not one that I did. That's the original. The one on the left is the one I did. And I have a strict policy. I do not disassemble anything. I do not reassemble anything. I do not finish anything other than a straight natural Minwax wipe-on poly finish. So that's somebody else's job. There's too many possibilities of not matching colors and things like that. So it's not my.
What I mean is when you're finished turning that, you've got it between centers on the lathe.
Oh, the top newel or the top finial is a separate piece.
Okay.
So
That's
it has a tenon on it and goes down into the base. So
how much of it is the top finial and how much is the base? Where's the division?
actually, I made two top pieces: the finial itself, and then that larger diameter piece just under it.
So the egg and the cup, the egg and the egg cup is one piece, and then
Yep, exactly.
And there's they have a dowel in a hole to assemble.
Well, it's a round tenon and a hole in the top of the newel. So, and then the little ring you see at the bottom, I left that so that they could cut it to fit. That had to be split and put on later, so they handled that.
You drill a hole first and turn to it?
Yes, absolutely. It's very difficult the opposite way. I do these for an organization here in Atlanta. They recognize outstanding Black college athletes from small schools, and I've done a dozen or more, and then somebody from Harvard saw them, and I do a different base on the ones from Harvard, but I do them for them as well.
It's hard to turn that base.
It is. I don't spend a whole lot of time on the base. I use a router and make my moldings, and then just it's fairly simple. The drilling the hole at that angle is the difficult part. So,
how do you do it?
I took sandbags and made a little fixture to go on the drill press so that they all came out the same. You got to innovate. And the stitches are actually rawhide. And that's the hard part is getting a needle to go through that sapele.
Well, how do you do that?
I drill holes and I stuff it down in there with CA glue.
Damn stiff.
So I made myself a template that matches what the footballs have. That's a full-size football.
So each of these is a separate little piece, right?
Yes, it is a separate little piece, and then the lengthwise ones. So
is the ball hollow?
No, you would not want to drop kick that ball. It would hurt you. It weighs a lot, and it is sapele, and I usually get the there I had to use I think 8/4, 10/4. They didn't have any 12 or 16/4. They're usually, I think I make them 6 3/4 inches in diameter and 11.5 or so inches long, and then I do the initial seams with the flute master on the lathe, and then come back and drill it. I made a template to drill them.
My son has a regulation size football with Penn State logos on it that I made, and it was hollowed. I made it in 2 halves and put it together. Used rawhide lacing.
Yep.
Very cool.
These are just some basic table legs. And I can't tell, 2, 4, 6, 36 of those, but it can be anywhere from 4 to whatever. I did one batch for a company 2 years ago that 192 legs that were identical.
Well, the same thing with that. When you make them identical, what do you use? Do you make a story stick or a stick with nails in it?
I make a story stick, and typically on ones like this where they have a pommel at each end, I do the pommels first and rough out the cylinder in between. Then I come back with the story stick and mark them and do all the details. I use a story stick and then vernier scales to match the diameters.
So what do you turn from the story? What's the first thing you turn from the cylinder?
Well, I would put what's now on the left end in the tailstock, and I start at the tailstock and work my way down to the headstock.
So you turn like each thing in succession, or do you part in all the
I part
fillets
in,
first?
and all the little steps on there are the same diameter. So I would part in on each one of those, and then come back and do the details, roll the beads, and then make the coves and that sort of thing.
And what do you use to roll the beads and make the coves with?
I use a spindle gouge. I use the skew a lot, and I insist that people learn how to use the skew. But when you're doing production work like that, the spindle gouge is faster, I think.
And for these table legs, what size spindle gouge would you use?
1/2 inch with a fingernail grind on them.
A fingernail grind?
Yes.
Yeah. And so in table leg like this, by the time you do like 36 in a batch, right? That would be like a day's work, 2 days work?
No, that's probably 2 days work because I'll get bored with them and I'll stop and do something else for a little while.
When you come back to them, do you find it hard to get back in the groove and make the same thing again, or is it easy?
No, not really. It's pretty simple once you get going. And one of the things that I try to stress with people that are getting started, first and foremost, is to do a lot of repetitive work, whether it's a honey dipper or Christmas tree ornament or whatever, and that gets you comfortable with the tools. And then once you're there, set up a routine for doing things so that you do them in the same sequence or same order, and they'll come out a lot more true.
Ah, good advice.
So. This was a band leader's mace I made for Home Depot for the game day celebrations. I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they put a hammerhead on top of the mace. That bulbous part on the right end is about 3.5 inches in diameter, and from there it tapers all the way down to 5/8 of an inch. And they called me the morning before they picked them up the next day and said, we're not sure that we can get this all done in one take, and if the guy drops it, we're dead. So will you make a second one? So, and that was like $400 for those. So,
what's the story on that steady rest?
That steady rest is a gentleman up in Indiana named Mark Waninger, who his past has been palladium windows and round top doors and that sort of thing. And he got the 4224 and was making large hollow vessels and still is. And he needed a steady rest. And Barb Crockett saw it and said, I want one. And then he called me and said, would you use one? And I took it to the AAW in, I think, Tampa. And we set up one of the lathes with the 8-foot bed and put a spindle on it. And he sold a bunch of them. So they're expensive, but they do work. It'll come all the way down to 1/2 inch. And those are inline skate wheels.
Nice. Are those, is the rubber on those soft or hard on the skate wheels?
They're sort of in between. They're not spongy, but they're firm.
Have you tried one-way steady rest ever?
I have one, and I use it for my small spindle work most of the time. I did not have it when I did this.
The problem with it is it won't do anything over about 4 inches.
Right.
If I wish they made one that was bigger.
Well, and I used it yesterday when I did the 1 1/4 spindles. So, and it's got the 3 wheels, and getting it set up takes a few minutes, but it does work.
Okay.
So That's a little 8-foot baseball bat that I made for the Atlanta Braves, and it's 7 inches in diameter and 8 feet long, and that's what they wanted, and that's what they got. So you can see a little part of my shop there. That's the 10-foot lathe.
And are your turning tools all like, are these turning tools or carving tools back here?
No, those are all turning tools, and that's just a small selection of what I have. We all have too many tools, and because I do teach, I have at least 6 of the most common tools, and then a lot of those are specialty tools that I don't use a lot.
And it looks like these are in sections of plastic pipe.
They are.
To the
I
wall,
took
yeah?
2-inch PVC and cut it at 45-degree angles so that I could just put a screw through them. And that works really well. And then there's a piece of 2x4 underneath them so that they all rest on it.
Nice. Any questions from anybody about the shop now that you can see a glimpse of it?
Neat. The chips fall through the tool rack too. That's pretty neat.
They do, but they also get piled up. It needs to be cleaned right now. This is a platter I made for Linda Ferber, who I've known her forever, and when she retired, I decided she needed something special. But that's also the sapele, and I do use 6/4. That's 14 inches in diameter, and my laser engraver guy did the engraving.
You've done a series of those for the AAW, haven't you?
No, that's the only one I've done for the AAW. Other people have done some. One of the guys up in North Carolina did the one that I got for working with the youth program a long time ago. Basic table bases. This is yellow pine, which is not my favorite thing to work with. It's just ugly. But these are an 18-inch table base. That's how I do the blank. And because it is so big, I actually roll it over to the door and take an electric chainsaw and cut the corners off of it so it will spin on the 4224. And they're heavy, and it's sitting on a hydraulic lift dolly that I bought from Harbor Freight. And I bought that probably 10 years ago, and it was only $200 then. It's probably $400 or $500 now, but it has saved my back on countless occasions. And I've got 2x4s extending out beyond it, so I can put something on it, roll it up to the lathe, find the centers, lock it in, roll it out, and then when it's done, I'll put it back up there and take it down. But somebody just picked up one of these yesterday.
How big are these blanks?
They're 18.5 by 18.5 by 26.
And you assemble that yourself?
With a lot of clamps. And a lot of, and the only glue I use is Franklin Type Bond 2, unless it's the sapele or something like that for outdoor use, and then I use the Type Bond 3.
Use the spur center or faceplate or what?
I use the one with the 3 dry points in it. The guy up in Canada makes, what's his name, Brian McElroy. I've got one of those, and then I just recently bought a thing called a spike plate. I have not used it yet, and it's 5 inches in diameter and has all these little spikes that stick out from it, and it screws onto the spindle.
Is that why the center ones stick out a little further?
Yeah, and that's also the tenon that you see on the top of the other piece, and there's a tenon on the bottom as well.
Oh, that's cheating or something.
No, it's saving a lot of material and a lot of cutting away is what it's doing. Hey, I got to make this happen quickly and efficiently. So,
Boy, it seems to me you'd have more time making up the blank than doing the turning on a thing like this.
pretty much, it's a long, involved process, and you can see I don't throw anything away. All the center ones are all the scrap. I could only buy this stuff 2x12, 16 feet long, and I cut them to length, and glue them up in widths as I need to. But you have to do a square. You can't, you can't just do the small sections that you see left on there. Otherwise, you don't have any way to clamp it. And it does take a while to glue it up. And then once it's glued up, I do it on the cart, and then I roll it up to the lathe and put it on there. It takes me probably 2 hours to turn it all away, and it fills up 3 of those 33-gallon bags of shavings.
Do you use a roller to roll the glue out to a consistent?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I pour it on and then spread it with a roller.
Yeah.
Do you get glue creep afterwards?
Typically, no. It's very unusual. And there's a new stuff I found. They gave me a sample at the Totally Turning back in March. And it's like a grit. And it's some sort of resin that you can sprinkle on so that you don't get any creep as you're clamping up. You know how things slide around. And it comes in a shaker, like a salt shaker, and you sprinkle it on. I have not tried it yet, but they tell me it works, and it's not affecting the tools or the glue. So that's the same company that I do that one, the other one for. I do this one, and same thing, 18 inches in diameter. But you can see how messy my shop is. They brought me.
Let's go back and look at how messy the shop is.
Actually, the floor is relatively clean there, but there's boxes of stuff all over the place. So,
do you have a big wood stash, and do you have that someplace else, or do you buy it as you need it?
No, I buy it as I need it, and I need to go through and organize it because I've gotten so many different materials in, and I've got bits and pieces of everything floating around, and it's just a mess. So a lot of the designers I work with will bring me something that's old and original and have me duplicate it. And this was a lamp, and they were happy with it. So
now, do you bore that for a wire before you turn it, or assemble?
I do.
Yeah.
No, the bases obviously were made separately since they're square, and I cut the blank. I put a tenon on each end and drill it from each end depending on the length of it, and then turn it between centers. And I did a lamp for the AAW symposium last year, and I created a little self-centering drive center that I use, and then a cone center in the other end.
So if you're drilling from both ends, how do you get them to line up?
My lathes line up. And I start out with a short bit, and I drill down probably 4 to 6 inches, depending on, and typically I use a 7/16 inch drill bit. And I'll drill as deep as I can with it, and then I'll turn around and put a longer bit in. And the 7/16 allows the brass lamp rod to go through the piece. And that's how we hold them together for the most part.
Does that hold the base and the top part to get turning together as well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's a little 5-foot golf tee I made for a country club, and I just did 2 4-footers, and we make lots of those. So it's a very popular item for country clubs. Just stands in the corner. Somebody else paints them and puts their logo on them and all that. So.
And we see more of the big lathe behind you as well, and
Yep.
some clamps.
Yes.
And an organized shop.
How do you scale that up? Do you draw it?
No, I make them give me a drawing with all the dimensions on it. And it's funny, depending on who you're dealing with, I'll get an order for table legs, and I'll say, well, what length do you want them? Well, the regular length. I said, no, I need to know the length because you may put a different size top on them. At the other end of the spectrum, I'll get a CAD drawing that has 29/64 on it. Or 5 digits to the right of the decimal point. And I mean, so I just roll with the flow and I do whatever works.
Just set your caliper.
Exactly. So, but these are trophies. I just got the order for the next 10 of these for a match play tournament that they do with the SEC teams. These are sapele. They're 8 inches in diameter and 24 inches tall. And they originally wanted them 10 inches in diameter. And I talked to my laser guy. He said, no, we can't do 10 inches on my laser. So we talked him into going down to 8. And they
Now,
have them bid on them.
Are these a hollow cup as well?
Yes, sir.
So how thick's the wall?
1/2 inch.
And so then they get a lid like on the drawing
They
there.
do get a lid, and it's supposed to represent a golf ball on top. And I don't texture it or anything. It's all sapele. So, and these are 2 8-inch square newel posts. The one on the left is 54 inches tall, and the one on the right is somewhat shorter than that. I don't remember how tall it was, but these were for the movie Color Purple, the musical, and they called me on a Thursday and said, we need these by next Friday. And they don't care what they pay, so I got them done for them.
Those are glued up blanks as well.
They are glued up, and they were going to be stained, and I did them out of soft maple. And the big one, well, they're both heavy, but this was a nice deal because they gave me a hand-drawn, full-scale drawing for both of them. And that's unheard of anymore. But they were happy with them, so that works for me.
So you just take the dimensions right off the drawing.
Exactly, and that sure is the easiest way to do it. But you know, and they do the finishing and all that.
So on a project like this, once you had it on the lathe, you'd make the pommel first.
Yep.
And then rough cylinders in between the pommels.
Yes, sir.
And then turn down to what on this? What would you turn down to the narrow neck here, or turn down to the bead? Or
actually, I started the details, and like the bottom there where it's a flat, I did that, and I actually had that in the tailstock and worked my way back once I got the pommels done. So these are also for a movie. I'm not sure what the name of the movie is, but they wanted crutches that would have been appropriate for 1815. And they wanted them out of red oak, which is not my favorite thing to turn, but that's what we got. And they didn't give me anything but the overall height of them, which they said, make them 54 inches because we're not sure how tall the actor is at the moment. And then we'll cut them to fit. And then the top, I made them, I don't know, 6 or 7 inches, and they brought them back and paid me to cut them back down. So they didn't give me any dimensions. I just did what looked appropriate for the drawing or the picture that they gave me. So.
Okay, now these are magazine articles from the Journal. And you said you'd made how many 100,000 of these wine stoppers?
I've made almost 250,000 of those. I started in 1988, and at the time I was making them all out of cocobolo. And back then, cocobolo, 1.5 inches square from Tropical Exotic Hardwoods, 12 inches long, was $1.55. That same blank right now is probably $30. It's just outrageous the way it's gone up. The corks I had made for me in Portugal. I bought them 50,000 at a time, and I sold them to people all over the country and actually all over the world. Craft Supply used to buy the corks from me. Packard and even Woodcraft bought the corks from me. So I would count out and sell them corks as well as using them myself. My dad used to cut the dowels and tap them into the blanks, and I'd cut or turn them with a machinists around call it.
And then the cork goes on after with a hole. And cork has a hole in it.
Yes, sir.
I can't imagine doing 250,000 of anything.
My record was 180 some odd in one day. So they don't take long. And now I've switched over to the Ruth Niles stainless steel stoppers, and they're actually faster. So, but
Why
I
are they
hardly
faster?
ever. I'm sorry.
Why are they faster?
Simply because you have to. All you do is drill the hole, and then it screws onto her mandrel,
Okay.
and then you screw the stainless steel stopper into that. And most of them I make now are out of canary wood, Bacote, or the Spectraply. I do a lot of them out of Spectraply. That's been very popular.
You put an insert in the wood, and do you epoxy, or how do you do that?
No, I don't put an insert in them, and I do not epoxy them. I just screw them in. And so far I haven't had a complaint, and I've made lots of them since then. But Rudy Osonic, we were talking about earlier, he told me probably 40-something years ago that if I wanted to make money turning, don't worry about making bowls. Find something small that you can make quickly and sell for a reasonable price. And the wine stoppers, honey dippers, Christmas ornaments, baby rattles, all those things have been very good production items.
We're going to see more of them as we go through here.
Yep.
I can't sell a bottle stopper. Everybody I know doesn't let the wine last that long.
Well, that's my question is, why do you want it? Because if I open a bottle of wine, that's what they make long straws for. And this was just an article on spindle turning. I did some bedpost, and this one was not actually one that I did, but a friend of mine did. And there's a reproduction of that that's probably 3 times that scale standing in front of the Willard Baxter wood turning studio at John C. Campbell that he did. So.
Well, for those of you who'd like to pursue any of these articles, I simply typed in Nick Cook into the search engine on the AAW website, and all the articles came up.
And this was probably the most popular article that I've done. And it explained a lot of the things that I saw. One of my favorites was I had a beginning bowl turning class at John C. Campbell, and in the evening I tell people they can do whatever they want to do. And Monday evening I'm standing at the front of the class, and somebody in the back corner, I hear this thump, 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 and he's got a big square blank mounted on his lathe, and he's got a spindle roughing gouge and just bouncing it all over the place. And I just went with my marine drill instructor voice and said, "Who in the hell told you could do this?" We had not gotten to that point yet. So anyway, but it just shows you some of the things that people do that you shouldn't really do.
And this has been reprinted many times in various books and compilations.
Right.
And there's the companion one on 20 ways to master spindle turning.
Yep.
So I'll leave you guys to look those up.
Unfortunately, Ernie, I don't know if you've still gotten any of them, but the mini spur drive center that Rudy came up with, that Craft Supply made, they're no longer available in the 1/2 inch, which is my favorite. The 3/8 inch, I have plenty of those, but I'm down to just 1 or 2 of the other ones. They've either dropped or broken or whatever. But the 3/8 inch ones, if you're not careful, would drill a hole in your piece, and it just is a nice way to do it. And I like the step centers, but only when the object is a fixed length and you don't have to part it off.
No, I miss those centers too. I just keep filing mine till it keep it working, but I mostly use a step center because I mostly use prepared stocks these days.
Yeah, but Barbara Dill was having some made for $50 a piece, and I bought one of hers, and they're fine, but apparently the guy went up on her, so They're not worth a lot more than that.
Yeah.
The ring holder was something that we did. Also did it for the youth program at AAW, and the kids like to make things for mom. And if you're coming to AAW, bring a kid with you because we don't have many kids signed up this year. We only have 14 lays set up, but I'll be doing 2 rotations, I think Friday morning.
You're talking about in Chattanooga in June.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this is both a 3-legged stool and a 4-legged stool. I'm doing this demo in at one of the local clubs in July, and it's very popular. My wife Kathy made 7 of these 3-legged stools for all her friends for Christmas one year.
How do you drill the holes at the right angle?
I have never been a fan of moving the table on a drill press because, first of all, it's hard to move. Secondly, you never get it back to 0. So I made platforms that set angles for the smaller 12-inch tall stool. I used 17 degrees, and for the 24-inch stool, I used 12 degrees because this play is so wide on that length. But I do that, and it's a lot faster and a lot easier. I just pull it off the shelf, put it on the drill press, and center it up. So use a brad point bit. Tea lights. When I was in Australia, a guy named Mark Zuckerman was doing tea lights, and I had done a little order of 1,350 dinner plates out of ash, and I had all this scrap left over because when I ordered the ash, it had to be 12 inches or wider because they were 11.5-inch platters or plates, and some of it was 18 inches wide, and it was a lot of waste. And I probably made 1,200, or maybe not quite 1,200, maybe 1,000 of these that are 4 inches in diameter and 1.5 inches thick. And then I started making them out of more exotic woods. But that was done with just between centers, putting making a mandrel and bringing up the tailstock and turning it away.
Nice project.
It is. And that's the acorn box that was threaded. The Willard Baxter Threadmaster is how I did it, and then the texturing just with one of the texturing tools. But they were very popular. He made some as small as earrings. So mine are usually about 2.5, 3 inches in diameter and about 4 inches tall.
Very popular project. A lot of people make them.
Yes. And unfortunately, we're unable to do this at AAW anymore, but the burned rim platter and ash is such a nice wood to turn. I turn the backside, obviously, and put the recess in it, and then put it on a chuck, and I turn the cove-shaped rim and burn it. And once I get the whole thing blackened, I take Scotch-Brite and cut it away so that you create that texture. And then I burn it again and cut it away even more. The softer grain goes away much faster than the winter growth, and that creates a really nice organic texture. And then once I have the burned area done, I put a coat of matte spray finish on it, the Krylon matte spray, and then I cut out the inside and do the whole thing over again. So.
And what do you use for a torch?
Propane torch, and I like the one with the igniter built into it so that you don't have to find a striker for it. So, but I still do this demo for a lot of the clubs, and the baby rattles I've been doing since I think I wrote the original article for American Woodworker. Remember that one?
Yeah.
A long time ago when it was just a small black and white magazine out of Tennessee, guy named Jim Cummings called me and said, "Do you want to do some articles for us?" And I did, and it then went to Rodell, was it?
Yeah,
Rodale.
Yeah.
David Sloan's on
Sloan,
screen down
the
here.
editor.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been doing those ever since, and I still do those, and it's a nice project. We now laser engrave them with the baby's name and the birth date, and they become an heirloom. And I can't tell you how many. I wish I'd have kept track, but some of the kids I made them for a long time ago are grown and are having kids now, which adds to it. So, but I use initially I made them. I would buy 8-quarter hard maple. I'd resaw it and cut it to length, mark all the pieces so that they went back in the same order, and it was a pain. And so I finally got to the point where I was buying 4-quarter and gluing it up and not paying any attention to the grain. You still can't tell the difference. But I take a big router, a 3.5 horse router, and with a 1-inch core box bit, and route out the cavity in both of them, and then glue them together with dried beans inside. Now, my dad used to glue them up for me, and about 1 out of every 50 would have something other than dried beans in it, and they could be 3/8-inch ball bearings or nuts and bolts or jingle bells, and they certainly made a different sound. And the Angel article was very popular too. I've done a lot of those. That originated by an organization that I was on the board of here, the Cobb Artisans Guild or whatever it was. And they decided to have a project one year for Christmas where everybody had to make angels out of whatever material they worked with. So, and the original ones I did out of ash and did the white pickling on them, and they were nice.
These are very nice, and they're hollow inside, aren't they? Like a bell.
Yes, they are, and you could use them for a tree topper as well. So.
Very popular. And then snowmen, millions of snowmen.
I can't tell you how many of those I've made, and all the stuff that was crooked yesterday, I'm going to cut up into snowman blanks. These are actually out of basswood. We had a project, used to have a project here in town, the Festival of Trees, and each organization, the Braves, the Falcons, and all the various clubs around town. The Georgia Association of Woodturners, we did a tree, and we tried to have, 200-300 ornaments on it. And we would get onto the club members starting in June saying, we need ornaments for the trees. And they'd call me in November and say, we're short ornaments, and I'd make a bunch of these. So, and the hat is actually walnut, and I sand the head at a slight angle and just stick that on there with CA glue.
Oh, this is a very popular project.
Yes, it has been, and I've made hundreds and hundreds of these. We have 2 of them sitting on the table right now, and my favorite is one that I made 2 of them. Dixie Biggs said, if you'll make them, I'll decorate them. And I have one that she has hand carved individual peppercorns in the top and hand painted them in the green and black and pink. And her partner said she went crazy just moving all these peppercorns around on the table to get them right. But it's really a nice pepper mill. So. And then the egg cups was another article I did for the kids. They like that. So
I think that's the end of the slide. So I'm going to stop the share.
All right.
And now we're back to looking at you. I think everybody see Nick?
Yes.
All right, and we're right up on the hour. Nick, thank you so very much.
All right. Are there no questions?
I think there must be some questions out there. Let's see what we got for questions in the gallery review. Any questions for Nick? David?
There's no
David
question.
Sloan?
Well, we've got to tell them about Miss Chastine's
Nick, nice to see your face again. Hey, my question was, what is a decent pepper mill mechanism these days?
I use the Chef Specialties that's made in America, and I did that demo at the Jacksonville Club a couple of weeks ago, and Woodcraft has always carried the Chef Specialties, and we went out to get the mechanism for them, and I took my own, but one of the members for the hands-on wanted to do one, and they're completely different, and there were no instructions. We went online, we couldn't find the instructions, so I don't know, but Chef Specialties has always been good. They're a good company to deal with, and Packard, Woodcraft, and or Woodcraft did, but Craft Supply also sells them. So,
thanks, Nick.
Any other questions for Nick?
well, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks. It's been very entertaining. We should all give you a round of applause if everybody will turn their mics on.
Thank you
for being here, Nick.
All right,
you very
good to
much,
see
Nick.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
See you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
See you all next week.
Thank you, everyone.
See you all next week.
Love your snowmen, Nick.
Thanks.
Wood.